appreciate everyone coming in to this kind of third community town hall. It's great to see all the familiar faces and a few new faces coming in, just to kind of provide everyone with a brief TLDR of what will happen today. Essentially, usually what happens is there'll be a few talks from the dYdX Foundation team, dYdX trading team, some discussion around governance proposals that are ongoing, and ultimately we get a couple of community members coming on who have been active grantees and or delegates, or those who have kind of been really active on the forums and have got interesting thoughts and real thought leadership to share from anything from governance to anything else really. We decided to increase these to a monthly cadence now. Originally, we obviously said this would be a quarterly kind of AMA and town hall, but really with all the new updates coming from dYdX trading, blog posts released, and all the new forum posts, governance proposals that are coming out, we thought it would be a great thing to kind of kick this off on a monthly basis, and then we can have an AMA at the end of it as usual. So to provide a little bit of a background to everyone who's on this call today, we've got Charles Dorsey, who's obviously the CEO of the dYdX Foundation, dYdX Trading present on this call today, but we've got Carl from the dYdX Grant subDAO, Kalen from the dYdX Ops subDAO to discuss obviously the Ops 2.0 proposal, Clifton from the dYdX Foundation governance team. Hisashi has joined us as a first timer who leads the dYdX Japan efforts and is going to talk through some events. We've got OXcChan, who I think is a familiar face in the community, who's going to talk through a couple of, I think, important points within the community. And then OXCLR as well, who's a familiar face, Craig from Considered Finance. And then ultimately we'll end with a Q&A. So just a few bits of housekeeping. Obviously, if everyone can keep their mics muted, be really appreciated. We'll do our best to stick to timing. I think we're going to try and get through 5 minutes per person, and then obviously have a bit of a Q&A at the end that everyone can kind of ask questions either on the comment section or come up and ask a question to the team or community members. Cool. I think as usual, this will be recorded and published, and this will hopefully go live tomorrow, the video format. I think that's everything from my end. I guess let's get started. First up, Charles, I'll let you take it away.
Thanks a lot, James. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Really happy to join you guys again for this monthly community call. We have some ongoing conversations on multiple streams, but it's always good to kind of check in and gather to get updates. And I appreciate really everyone making the effort and fighting the time zones to join the call. So we are trying to get those calls kind of adjusted to accommodate as many people as possible and consider the different time zones for everyone. So that's a great thing that many people can join today. A quick few words about the dYdX Foundation for some of you which might be new to the ecosystem. So we are an organization, non-profit organization dedicated to enabling the community of dYdX, the developers, and decentralized governance. We have a team of about 20 people spread all across the world, and we are very busy those days in essentially supporting the dYdX V4 launch, and as well as supporting the community in all things related to DAO and decentralized governance. If we look at Q2, which is about to end, we've been super busy at some events. So visiting and attending events all over the world. I think India came to mind. I was in India with our colleagues from the foundations over there a few times. I was in Korea as well earlier this month. But there was also a lot of activities from our different community members and as well as foundation members, which were part of different events. Should it be in Turkey, France, you name it. a lot of activity. So that's really energizing, and always a pleasure to connect in real life whenever we have the opportunity. In terms of governance, I think the community has really well settled into the new forum, dYdX.forum. The software is really showing that it's easier for everyone to communicate. There is more conversations. So it's really good to see that there is some activity on this front. I will let the governance team maybe touch on the different governance conversations, but otherwise, I want to thank as well Tristan from the foundation for doing this weekly or monthly governance recap. It's really a good way for everyone to kind of catch up on everything happening regarding the governance. Still a lot of activity on the user support, a lot of community initiatives. I think we're going to touch later on during this call on the call drawn from the dYdX grants, and that's really getting traction. So we're all super excited about that. As well as a delegate and DAO hurdles, there is a lot of work from many of you on trying to define what means being a delegate in the context of the upcoming version 4 of dYdX, and that's super exciting to see that these conversations are progressing. Obviously, we still need to have more information made available about V4, but there is definitely this kind of strong dynamic on this topic, which is really encouraging. For the next quarter, Q3, we will keep supporting essentially the subDAO efforts. As you know, the operation dYdX operations DAO is in the process of raising funds from the community treasury, so that's something we're very excited about, and as everyone in the community kind of supporting as much as we can, sharing information, making sure the votes are well publicized so people can come and express their support and their comments to this initiative. We'll keep building the potential of dYdX before launch. A few of us.
Charles, is it just me who is losing Charles, or is everyone?
I know. He's frozen.
Yeah.
At the Paris Blockchain Week, community initiatives.
Charles, just lost you for a sec. I think you're back now.
Excellent. Sorry about that. So yes, as I was saying, we will keep supporting the launch of V4. A few of us will be in France for the Paris Blockchain Week later next month. So expect a lot of conversations with during different events with different participants of the ecosystem in general. But there will be also activity in Japan, in Turkey. So really keep yourself updated on all the different events. And if you have some initiatives, leverage the grants program, the call down, and make sure you publicize all your activities on Twitter, on the forum, so that everyone feels the energy of the community of dYdX. Maybe one last call for action, really leverage the forums. This is where you can raise your hand, you can join some initiatives, you can offer some new ideas for the ecosystem, you can offer some of your help for some initiatives. Maybe if you want to design some work streams or working groups about specific topics, this is really where most of the conversations and really building starts. So leverage these tools. Of course, Discord is there, the forum is there, Twitter is there as well. But leverage all these tools to really be part of the community. As you know, it's a very welcoming community, but you sometimes have to essentially initiate conversations to join teams. But everyone is very much welcome, and the atmosphere is fantastic. So I'm really looking forward to welcoming additional users and members in the community. It's different channels, the forum, Discord, and Twitter as well.
Brilliant, Carl. Thank you very much for getting up early for this. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no worries. Of course. Thanks for having me as always. I'll keep mine a bit brief, but so for dYdX grants, in the past month, we approved 13 new grants for a total funding of $48,900, I think it was. You can see the total numbers here. That brings us at 116 grants overall, with over $3 million in total funding, and 92 unique grantees, and 82 of those have been completed. Grants V1.5 now has exactly, actually, as of today, 3 months to go on the current mandate, and we have just over 2 million in allocated funding left. So we're excited to find productive ways to deploy that capital. With that in mind, the public testnet is quickly approaching, and our biggest focus has been funding the tooling, services, and resources to support the community and future developers in that environment. So we're hoping to maximize the likelihood of a successful testnet experience with targeted grants. We've approved the first of those in the All That Node services supported by DSRB, a popular validator, to enable public RPCs, archive nodes, and faucets in the public testnet that's coming up. And we're now in the final stages of approving a grant to launch the first public indexer on the testnet as well. More to come on that in the next few days, but we're really excited to be able to support kind of this infrastructure layer that's going to be key for kind of engagement, participation, and improving the overall experience of the upcoming testnet. Meanwhile, we've also had awesome grants come through the community cauldron pipeline, including OXCLR, who's there today, his financial epoch reports that are posted on the forum, a few different community workshops and events, and we're sponsoring some community members to attend a DeFi event that's coming up in July as well. So just a quick reminder to all the community members here, the Cauldron is an effort to kind of promote and grow active community members participating in dYdX. So if you have an idea, if you're trying to attend an event or something like that, we would love to chat with you and just kind of find ways to continue making this a fun protocol to participate in. And finally, we also saw an insane uptick in applications in the last month with 175 new applications. As I mentioned, like our previous highest was 63, so it's kind of just an insane month, which is really great to see. It shows that people are more excited than ever to contribute towards dYdX, and we're just super excited by that to keep pushing forward and finding ways to promote the protocol. So lots more to come from us. I'll wrap up there.
Thanks, Carl. Appreciate that. Nice update. Thank you. Dot 2.0, Kaylin, I'll leave you to discuss this.
Awesome. Cool. I think since the last town hall, the proposal was in the very early stages. It had just been posted to the forum with a bunch of discussion happening. I think since then, a lot has happened, both in the background and sort of like what the community has seen as well. We had a successful snapshot vote, which approved the mandate and the funding as an initial temperature check, which was great. However, at that time, we hadn't sort of finalized the 3 new trustees and an enforcer. And, you know, for people who are following in the forum, you would have seen the post from Joanna and I, where we sort of described that we were successful in finding 3 new trustees and an enforcer. We managed to get Chaos Labs, Fig from Flipside Crypto. However, he'll be joining under the Flipside Cayman entity. And then we have Christoph Son, who's a product manager from Safe. And then as our enforcer, we have Joseph, or who many of you probably know him as, is Immutable Lawyer. And then I also believe there's a slight change to Joanna's sort of title underneath the trust. She will be joining under an entity instead of just her personal name. That's great. And for those who aren't sort of aware of like the next steps, we have a on-chain vote starting in around like an hour and 40 minutes. And I believe that'll be live for 7 days. And then once that sort of has finished and is successful, we will see the funds get transferred to DOTS multi-sig. And then we can also finalize the new trust agreement on behalf of the dYdX Operations Trust. In terms of, I guess, hiring and everything that's going on there, hiring has been really great. We've had a total number of applicants of 55 people. 22 have been for the operations lead, 21 have been for the site reliability engineer, and 12 have been for the technical project lead. So yeah, that's going really well. We've had strong applicants and they're going through various stages of the process right now. And we're really hoping that in the next couple of weeks, we can have some of those roles finalized. So yeah, there has been a couple of community members, which has been great to see. So yeah, thanks to everyone who has applied. It's been great to sort of chat to you guys, get to know you better, and understand how you guys would fit in these various roles.
Appreciate it, Galen. Thanks for that update. Cool, moving on. Cliff, I think this is you, sir.
Yeah, happy to take this on. Galen pretty much covered a lot of what I wanted to cover, but we have an on-chain vote that's been created, and the vote is going live in about an hour and 40 minutes. So essentially, it's to launch the dYdX Operation subDAO version 2 for an additional 18-month term with $6.6 million from the dYdX Treasury, right? So as Galen mentioned, the snapshot passed about a week and a half ago with 303 addresses voting and 17.7 million voting in support. So this proposal requires an on-chain vote just because it requires the transferring of dYdX tokens from the Treasury over to the DOTS multisig. The vote will run for 4 days, not a week. It starts today, Thursday, and it will end on Sunday. So post that, the proposal will be in queue, and then if it succeeds, then we can go ahead with the implementation. So the first discussion I want to highlight is the governance transition to V4, supporting endorsed delegates by OXcChan, who's on the call today, right? So in essence, when we move over to the Cosmos-based blockchain, governance is going to look quite different, right? So we potentially will have stake token holders and validators take over the on-chain voting process instead of what we are familiar with today, where we have everyday token holders and delegates that can actually vote on-chain, right? So endorsed delegates have been very, very important, and they take up a good weightage when it comes to voting weight across all different proposals. They've been super active. They're, in fact, leaders of the community, right? So it's essential that we kind of bridge them over to V4 to make sure that they have continued leadership in when it comes to governance. So a few community members have commented around how we can continue to empower them. So one of the more promising ways that we've seen so far is to leverage the OffZ module, which enables delegation as per what we see today. So essentially, token holders can authorize any other Cosmos-based address to vote on their behalf, which simulates delegation. So looking forward to, Flipside releasing a paper about this soon, and for the community to continue discussing about this topic. So Tristan, do you mind just hitting the next button? So the next DRC, which is pretty interesting, is talking about private voting for dYdX governance. So a common issue that we've seen today, not just in dYdX, but in many, many DAOs, is that, a lot of big token holders can just come in, vote one way, and then other smaller token holders will essentially, just be jaded and feel like, their vote doesn't matter. So if you can see, I don't know how we can make this a little bit bigger, but this discussion essentially aims to implement a blind voting mechanism on Snapshot. So you'll be able to see like all the participants, but you wouldn't be able to see what they voted for, and you wouldn't be able to see how much their voting power is. So essentially, it kind of encourages more people to vote autonomously and without influence on education about other people's votes. So a pretty interesting conversation raised by Bristol Blockchain, getting pretty good traction as well. Tristan, could you hit next, please? Yep. So another discussion raised by OXcChan is around assessing token bridges. So with the migration of the dYdX, with the launch of V4, the dYdX token might potentially be migrated over from Ethereum to Cosmos, right? So OXcChan brought about many different operational and security concerns when it comes to adopting bridges. And this has gotten quite a few good responses. And I think a lot of bridging providers are actually actively reaching out and wanting to speak to not just the foundation, but to other ecosystem players as well, just to understand where we are in this process. So yeah, keep your eye out on that discussion. And lastly, Tristan, please. Kagan, who is also on this call, actually put up a discussion to establish a trading council for future dYdX proposal voting. So essentially, this aims to replace the governance module that the governance structure that we have today, right? So instead of a one token, one vote model, he's proposing that we should adopt a council model similar to what Synthetics has, right? So the Synthetics council members actually are the ones who decide on what governance is going to look like. They decide on proposals that hit the forums. They decide on the outcome of different proposals, and these council members are essentially elected by token holders. So sorry about that, Kagan. I should have posted a more updated screenshot, but yeah, that's the overall TLDR. And if you guys have any questions, feel free to reach out to him or look into the forums for the most updated post. So yeah, that's an update on all the main governance discussions that we've had today, and really want to thank you guys for continuing to be so participative in governance on dYdX.forum.
Hi guys. My name is Hisashi, and I'm Japan lead for dYdX Foundation. Today, I'm very excited to tell you about our recent trip to Korean Blockchain Week. It was actually just last week. And although I'm Japan lead, the South Korea, the capital Seoul is very close to Tokyo. It's like 2 hours by flight. And me and Charles went to Korean Blockchain Week because we are invited as the speakers at several key events there. So Charles took center stage with his keynote at Middle Asia. It was titled dYdX Application Becoming a Protocol. Charles did a fantastic job representing the brand as always. And as for me, I had the chance to join a panel discussion at Middle Asia. It was titled Interoperability Roundtable. It could be a little bit too technical for me, but I could manage to speak about. I could manage to have a great discussion with some fantastic folks from Shapeshift, A41, and Nethermind. And also, I was given the opportunity to present a keynote at the IBC Summit. The Korean Blockchain Week was basically jam-packed with the networking opportunities. And we had, both me and Charles, had some productive face-to-face meetings with potential partners and existing partners, including wallet developers, validators, delegates, market makers, and even students. The dYdX is really well received. We are very overwhelmed by the positive response to dYdX in South Korea. One of the standout moments that I would like to share with you is there was never-ending line of people who wanted to talk to Charles. So that was, I should have taken that picture and wanted to show that with you, but that was like really, that shows how dYdX is well received and well recognized. Additional highlight that I want to make is IBC Summit was supported by the community program that Carl was talking previously. It was made possible by Kepler's application. And I'd like to shout out to dYdX grant team and Alexios for making this happen. In other exciting news, Espacio Crypto has successfully completed a grant in Mexico City. And we are obviously not stopping here when it comes to events. Next, dYdX Foundation is headed for Paris for the Nebula event in July, and to Istanbul for Cosmobus in October. So stay tuned for more updates, and thank you for listening.
OXcChan, Colin, welcome on again.
All right. Hi, everyone. Yeah, so this is pretty much from discussions with some areas of interest that maybe the community wants to look at, looking ahead for the long-term future, and perhaps just on immediate areas on governance, tokens, and risk as well. I think governance, Clifton has pretty much mentioned everything already, how Cosmos is a proof of stake. We have additional stakeholders like validators. So how do we sort of have fair distribution, in governance power across the network while empowering endorsed delegates who have been representing the interests of the community so far. So a lot of great discussion, research is upcoming from Flipside. But I guess for me, a main point that we maybe want to consider for proof of stake, as with any proof of stake environment, is really about incentive alignment amongst all the various stakeholders. So there's just something out there. And then for token transition, it's really something that immediate future that we can sort of foresee for in transitioning over to Cosmos. As we know, bridges are a very nascent thing in terms of technology, infrastructure, and adoption in general. It's going to be very critical because this is going to be the core piece of infrastructure for dYdX with sister protocols on Cosmos chain, or even with other chains and even exchanges as well, right? So very highly debated topic. You can see the Uniswap, Osmosis, etc. So it's great. I didn't know that there were bridge providers that have already reached out. I think Reuters chain also commented in the forums. So I guess, hopefully there's more clarity and whether there's a need for more research in these areas for the community to make an informed decision prior to this transition as well. And in terms of the risk side, this is really more of ensuring an orderly transition of positions and liquidity over from V3 to V4 in terms of liquidity migration for LPs, in terms of ensuring sufficient markets and liquidity for healthy trading flows in the Cosmos world. And of course, for existing positions on V3 platform, which could be, large OIs, outstanding positions, delinquent traders, how do we sort of ensure that it's orderly liquidation in this transition, right? So we can see that from Synthetics as well, who most recently increased their margin requirements for positions. So I thought these maybe are just some of the areas that we can discuss on for the community to also think about from these three domains in particular.
Craig, over to you, sir.
Thanks. Yes, so the first thing I wanted to talk about was the financial reporting for dYdX. Sometime around when all the discussions were happening around the various rewards and how to right-size that, and pretty much, whether we're paying too much or too little in the current environment, I started to realize that I personally didn't have the context to make this decision at all. I had no real ideas to what the status of dYdX's finances are, because ultimately it is a financial decision. There is a sort of finite number of tokens, and the community can decide to spend them quickly, slowly, and make decisions around that. And I had no way to know sort of where we are, what the current trajectory would mean, and how that could change with some of the various proposals that were coming through. So that was sort of the genesis of the idea to put them together and just sort of provide a service to the community. And as that has evolved, I've started to realize that there's more and more that's more and more of an important role to play within any kind of a DAO, but any kind of organization really, but particularly a DAO where there's a very flat structure. And when there's a flat structure like that, there's a broad range of decision makers, and information needs to be made as transparent as possible. So that's really the idea behind it. I would encourage everyone to read it. Hopefully you find something interesting in there and learn something. I personally felt that I learned a lot trying to put it together. So I would hope that outside of maybe the foundation, everyone else can get something out of it. And the idea is from here. Just as a disclaimer, the most recent one was funded by a Cauldron grant, and there's going to be an Epoch 23 version coming out next week that's also being funded, and that's going to help to evolve the report into something that it's going to move from. Currently it's showing a bunch of metrics that I found hard to surface into an actual financial statement, as you would normally find in a traditional company, and from there to shift into a financial model and add more and more opinionated elements to it with the right disclaimers. So the community can see some transparency around the assumptions that go into all of that, and then hopefully everyone will be empowered to make up their own minds around any kind of governance proposals or anything of that shape that happens going forward. Then the second thing is actually a collaboration between myself, a couple of colleagues on my side, and Chaos Labs. We started to discuss this with Mo and the Chaos team in February, I think, as to how we could just help empower the community to take some of the responsibilities of on-chain governance in V4, particularly on the risk side. And the obvious jumping off point to us seemed to be to create the dashboard tooling that would, first of all, give a measure of order book of liquidity, which is not the easiest thing in an order book exchange. In an AMM, as anyone knows, you can just see how much liquidity is on the current tick or in the smart contract. And an order book exchange, that's changing every microsecond almost. So we've come up with a way to constantly sample these order books at a few preset depths and report the distribution, shall I say. So, what is the median liquidity measured within 20 bips? What is the 99th percentile and a few other percentiles along that range? So hopefully going forward, there's an objective measure so people can say, if the ETH market has 1,000 ETH within 20 bips today, and in 2 months' time it's 1,500, there is a 50% improvement. And, we can also see, does that fall off very quickly in the stress scenarios? And maybe that could be, maybe that needs to be incentivized further. It's to help those kinds of decision making. And then secondly, it's to implement a paper that I wrote, I think it was the end of last year, on setting margin risk parameters, which is also going to need to happen through an on-chain process in V4. And it's implementing basically that paper, which uses these order book measures to find what are some safe parameters for the community that can also scale as liquidity scales, so that we will hopefully be competitive with the biggest exchanges in the world shortly. And sorry, the last thing is a proposal that's a little bit on ice, or is on ice at the moment, but maybe I'll just mention it quickly. It was a proposal to reduce the threshold for on-chain proposals, just how much proposal power is needed. The idea was just to unblock endorsed delegates with that. The thinking was that as subDAOs are formed and any other preparation happens ahead of V4, there's a very limited number of potential proposers, and these proposers could get overwhelmed with proposals in a sense, or maybe people want to work with other sponsors who are going to be more involved in the projects themselves. But I think I mentioned this in the last post, that it would take a lot of work, and there hasn't been a lot of appetite for it from the community. So it's probably best left for V4, where all of these will change anyway, unless anyone feels strongly about it, and I'm happy to pick that up again.
I guess we can open the floor to some questions. We've probably got time for one or two. Feel free to anyone to raise their hand and come up on stage. Kaelan, I don't know if you want to briefly touch on Vlad's post there.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I don't want to speak for anyone that joined the trust. However, I think it just comes from a natural place of, trying to limit your liability. We've seen the SEC go for the Uki DAO and just sort of random other DAOs in the space. So I think it just comes from a place of comfort where they can onboard as an entity to have limited liability instead of an individual. And yeah, I mean, there is definitely a heightened risk when you're dealing with a derivatives exchange. So yeah, I think it more just comes from a comfort perspective. But I mean, in the terms of Chaos Labs, it makes sense for them to onboard as an entity because that's how everyone knows them as, and that's sort of how they run their own business. But yeah, hope that answers your question.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Kaelan. Awesome. Anything else from anyone? I know some comments and conversations are happening in the channel. Carl has jumped off. I think it was 4 a.m. for him, so understandable that he's probably gone back to bed for a little bit. But if there's anything grants related, he said feel free to ask in the Discord grants channel. Okay.
Maybe just briefly, whenever you see the foundation joining some events or organizing some events, even though it might be very remote for you, if you happen to be traveling in those parts of the world, just feel free to say hi and join us. We usually try to get, whenever we go traveling, having some informal breakfast, lunch, dinners with members of the community. So I think we should jump on any opportunity to kind of meet and gather. So if you happen to be traveling in Europe or traveling wherever there is events co-organized or attended by dYdX community, I really invite everyone to kind of try to gather and just spend some good time in real life together.
Sounds good to me. Perfect. Okay. We'll close this off here. As usual, we will post this on Discord and YouTube. And we will see you all at the 4th Community Town Hall. Anything from you, Charles, to finish off?
Happy voting, guys. We have a big vote going on in the coming days. So whoever wants to express their opinion on this proposal is obviously super welcome, and to bring this to the finishing line. And looking forward to see you all again during our next community call.